The hurricane was supposed to be the danger. That is the thing that sits at the center of this story and refuses to move. That on the morning of August 27, 1992, the entire state of Mississippi was braced for Andrew, one of the most ferocious storm systems to tear through the American South in decades, was dominating every television broadcast, every radio station, every conversation at every gas station and grocery store from the Gulf Coast to the Tennessee border. People were boarding windows, filling bathtubs with water, pulling their children close. The storm was the thing to be afraid of. Nobody thought to be afraid of what was already inside. Vicky Felton came home that morning the way mothers come home after being away, with the specific mixture of relief and routine that belongs to returning. She had been out. The storm was the reason for urgency now. Getting back, getting settled, getting her daughter. She stepped through the door of their home in Tupelo, Mississippi, and called for Lee. Lee Marine Orkey was 13 years old. She did not answer. Vicky called again. The house gave back silence. She moved through the rooms the way you do when you expect to find someone, checking the bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen. And what she found instead of her daughter was blood. Not a small amount. Not the kind of blood that has an innocent explanation, evidence of blood. The kind that investigators would later describe in the careful, measured language of people trying to hold the worst conclusions at arm's length, while everything points directly toward them. Lee was gone. The storm screamed outside, and inside that house in Tupelo, a mother stood in her daughter's blood and began making the calls that would consume the next 30 years of her life. To understand what happened to Lee Orkey, or to come as close to understanding as this case allows, which is not very close at all, you have to understand the geography of that morning. Tupelo, Mississippi in 1992 was not a large city. It was the kind of southern town where people knew their neighbors, where a teenage girl missing from her home or a hurricane have produced immediate answers, because someone, somewhere, must have seen something. But Hurricane Andrew had done something that whoever took Lee Orkey may have understood perfectly well. It had cleared the streets. It had driven people indoors. It had pulled curtains across windows and filled the air with enough noise to swallow almost any other sound. The storm that everyone was watching on television had created, in the neighborhoods of Tupelo, something close to perfect cover. The searches began immediately and found nothing. Law enforcement, volunteers, search teams moved through and around Tupelo a days that followed. They searched with the urgency that a missing 13-year-old demands and came back empty every time. No Lee, no trail, no witness who had seen a car or heard a scream or noticed anything out of place beyond the ordinary chaos of a storm-battered southern morning. Vicky Felton cooperated fully. She answered every question. She sat through every interview. She did what mothers do in these circumstances. She kept showing up, kept talking, kept insisting that someone had to know something. She had left her daughter home while the hurricane approached and come back to find her gone. And she would spend decades in the particular anguish of a parent whose child has no grave, no confirmed ending, just an open wound where an answer should be. And then September arrived, and the case produced a detail that changed its temperature entirely. On September 9th, 1992, 13 days after Lee vanished, an envelope arrived at the Orkey family home. Inside it were Lee's eyeglasses, mailed. Someone had taken the time to find an envelope, write an address, affix a stamp, walk to a mailbox or post office, and send a missing 13-year-old girl's glasses back to her home. A message. The envelope was not addressed to Vicky Felton. It was not addressed to Lee. It was addressed to Lee's ex-stepfather. That detail is not incidental. That detail is the whole story trying to speak. Law enforcement analyzed the envelope and reached a conclusion they stated with unusual directness for investigators who typically guard their language carefully. This was a ruse, a deliberate attempt to redirect the investigation, to pull detectives' attention toward the ex-stepfather, to create a suspect where perhaps there wasn't one, or to obscure the identity of the person who actually was. Whoever mailed those glasses knew where Lee's family lived, knew the name of her ex-stepfather, knew that addressing the envelope to him would ignite suspicion in a specific direction. This was not random. This was not opportunistic. This was calculated. The move of someone who was following the investigation closely enough to attempt to manipulate it from the outside, which means whoever took Lee Orkey was not a stranger passing through Tupelo during a hurricane. Or if they were a stranger, they became very familiar very quickly. The ex-stepfather was investigated, the way anyone investigated by implication in a missing child case is investigated, thoroughly, painfully, with the full weight of law enforcement attention, pressing down on every aspect of his life and alibi and history. That investigation did not produce charges. It did not produce a confession. It did not produce Lee. What it may have produced, and this is the unbearable possibility that sits at the center of the eyeglasses detail, is exactly what the sender intended: confusion, misdirection, wasted time. November 1993 arrived with what seemed, briefly and cruelly, like an answer. A human skull was discovered in a soybean field. The location, the timing, the circumstances. Investigators made a connection to Lee Orkey. It was reported. It was processed. Families held their breath in the particular suspension of people waiting to find out if the thing they have feared is confirmed or still somehow deniable. It was retracted. DNA and forensic analysis determined the skull did not belong to Lee Orkey. It belonged to an adult woman who had gone missing from a neighboring town. Her own separate tragedy. Her own family waiting for their own answers. To missing women, to open cases, and a field in Mississippi that had briefly held what looked like the thread connecting them before science pulled them apart again. For Vicky Felton, the retraction was its own kind of devastation, not because she wanted her daughter to be dead. No mother wants confirmation of that, but because a confirmed ending, even the worst one, is still an ending. It is still a place to put your grief, still a direction to face. The retraction sends everything back to the open water of not knowing, and not knowing is its own specific torture that has no name in any language adequate to describe it. Here is where this story demands that we slow down and sit with something uncomfortable. Lee Orkey vanished during a hurricane. The storm that was supposed to be the threat turned out to be the cover. Her glasses arrived in the mail 13 days later, addressed to implicate a specific man. A skull in a soybean field was briefly and wrongly attributed to her before being identified as someone else entirely. And through all of it, through the searches and the envelope and the false identification and the years of investigation, no one has ever been charged. No one. That is not a failure of effort. Investigators in Mississippi and at the federal level have returned to this case multiple times across 3 decades. Lee's case has been featured on national missing persons programs, has generated tips from across the country, has been re-examined with updated forensic tools that did not exist in 1992. She has not been found. The eyeglasses are perhaps the most haunting physical object in this entire case. Someone touched them. Someone held them in their hands and made a decision, not to discard them, not to destroy them, but to mail them home. There is a psychology in that choice that investigators and criminal profilers have analyzed extensively. It suggests someone who wanted to communicate, who needed to be part of the story even in disguise, who could not simply disappear without leaving something behind. People who study cases like this call that kind of behavior insertion, the need to remain connected to the investigation, to watch the response, to feel the power of having created the chaos and then nudging it in a chosen direction. It is a behavioral signature, and behavioral signatures, unlike physical evidence, do not degrade over time. Lee Marie Orkey would be in her mid-40s today. She would be someone's colleague, possibly someone's wife, possibly someone's mother. She would remember, if she were alive and free to remember, the summer of 1992, the approach of a hurricane, the ordinary morning that became the last ordinary morning of everything her family had known. Instead, she is 13 forever in every photograph, every missing persons flyer, every anniversary news story that surfaces when a journalist rediscovers her case and writes the words that have been written so many times they have worn grooves in the language. Still missing. Still no answers. Investigation ongoing. Tupelo, Mississippi has carried Lee Orkey the way small southern cities carry their losses, quietly, persistently, with the particular stubbornness of communities that do not forget their children even when the national news cycle has long since moved on. Vicky Felton has never stopped. That is the thing about mothers in cases like this. They become the case. They become the living embodiment of an unanswered question. Every year that passes adds weight without adding resolution. Every new forensic technology raises hope and then either delivers an answer or, more often, delivers a more sophisticated version of the same silence. Somewhere in Mississippi or somewhere beyond it, the truth about the morning of August 27th, 1992 exists in the memory of at least one person who has carried it for over 30 years. The hurricane that was supposed to be the danger came and went. It tore through the south and moved on the way storms do, indifferent and temporary. Whatever took Lee Orkey did not move on. It has stayed quiet and hidden in the space between what her mother found when she came home and what no one has been able to explain since. A door, a silence, a daughter's blood, and a storm that gave someone exactly the cover they needed to make a 13-year-old girl disappear so completely that 3 decades of searching have not brought her one step closer to home. The envelope is still evidence, the case is still open, and somewhere, someone knows.